This is a Grizzly G0458 drum sander. It's got 18-inch wide capacity, but it's open-sided, so you can double that capacity. This is the belt, the feed belt here, and it's got a drum inside here. You can put sandpaper on, wrap around it. And you can see it works pretty good. This is what I just ran through it here. This is a piece of madrone, and this was the raw cut off the bandsaw, and this has been sitting up here for years, so it's pretty hard, and this sanded it down nice and makes it nice and pretty. So this is the raw side here. It's got a cup in it, and then here's a knot, or was a knot or something. Well, right here there's a knot, and so that dried differently, and it's got a little depression right here. So, and it's got a hump right here where as it dried it distorted. Well, anyway, that's taking that out of there. Well, ordinarily you'd want to run this through a jointer, flatten one side out, and then put it through the planer and do the other side. This is a little bit short for running through a planer. This piece would work, but it's a little bit short, but this works perfect for that. This is one I did last night. It's the same stuff, madrone. You can see how pretty that is. It gets that sanded down pretty nice. Well, I bought this several years ago with a bunch of other tools. It was on the Christmas sale. Price was knocked down from the regular price, and then I had a 15% discount for veterans discount on it. So I got this and my 12-inch lathe and a bunch of other tools at the same time. And mainly got this for my wife to do her little projects on and stuff, and do things that we didn't want to run through a planer or a jointer. I've got a bunch of old hardwood flooring that came out of the gymnasium that's got a varnish finish on it, and you don't want to run that through the planer, but this would be just perfect for taking that down, cleaning that up to use for projects and other things. And like I said, my wife does a bunch of little projects and stuff where she has short pieces, and she can run those through here to smooth those out, the boards and stuff. And we actually use this to sand down or plane a great big wide plank that my neighbor had. He had a big wide cypress plank. He and his brother had dove in a river down in Florida, got a bunch of old growth cypress out, and he had some big planks, and he wanted to make a bar in his house that he built. So we used this, and we were able to get that down. I think the thing was like 28 inches or almost 30 inches wide, and we'd run it through one side and then turn it around 180 degrees and then run it through the other side, and just kept doing that till we got one face cleaned up, and then we turned it over and did the other face, and we got it pretty well cleaned up like that. That turned out pretty nice. But this thing self-destructed just as we were finishing up on that. So I took it apart to fix it, and I just now got it back together. It's been several years now, 3 or 4 years since I took it apart, and I got busy with other things and didn't have time to fool with it. So I just now got it back together and working. But I'm going to have to tear it apart. So this side is the working end of it. This has got all the gears. The motor's down here in the bottom. It's got a drive here. It's got 2 feed belts coming off the drive. One of them drives the feed belt for the motor, or for the material, and one of them drives the sanding drum. And then the feed belt for the material, of course, drives a lot slower, and it's got a variable speed belt in it. And right behind here is the main shaft that comes through for the for the sanding belt, and there's a bearing right in here and a pulley right there, and that's what self-destructed. That's what came apart here a couple of years ago. So anyway, I'll open that up and show you what we got to do here yet on it to finish it. It's working pretty good now, but I don't want it to blow up again. Now this is the working end of it. Well, down here is the motor. Shaft comes out of the motor. There's a larger pulley here, the belt that runs up and to another pulley here, and this runs the sanding drum. And this is, I don't know exactly what that is, but it's probably 1.5 to 1 or something like that. And then we've got another belt here that runs off a small V section of the shaft down in here, and that runs this bigger pulley here, which then runs through a variable pulley back over here. And then this is the drive for the belt here, the feed belt. This is what gave me the trouble before. We'll sneak up on that. So this is the pulley that gave me the trouble before. This pulley spun on the shaft, and there's a key in the shaft and a keyway in the pulley. There was a set screw in the pulley, and either that set screw wasn't put in there or it came out, and I suspect that it wasn't put in there. So anyway, this thing moved and vibrated enough that the key came out of the keyway, and this pulley just spun on the shaft, and it created a mess. Of course, it galled the shaft up a little bit, but it pretty much destroyed the pulley on the inside of it. So I took this off. This is a bearing carrier right here and a bearing that supports the end of the shaft. So I took this support off and pulled that pulley out of there. Then I put the pulley on the lathe and bored out the center of the pulley, and then made a plug to go in there and shrink fit it in the pulley. And then I bored the pulley out to the shaft size, and I got a broach and broached out a new key in it. I've had it sitting on the shelf since I did that. I just got a brand new drill press, and the first thing I used it for was to drill out a hole in the pulley, threaded that for a new set screw, which I just put in. And then I put the pulley on the shaft, and I put a little bit of Loctite 680 on it, because there was just a little bit of play in that, because that shaft had been galled up too. Of course, all this stuff had been sitting out underneath this machine on the shelf down there for 4 or 5 years, however long it's been since I took it apart. And the seal on this bearing had come out, so the bearing was dirty inside. I took it and cleaned it all out, washed it out, packed it full of grease, and then I was able to get the seal back in it. But I don't really trust that bearing, so last night I got online and I ordered new bearings for this. So we'll be changing that bearing out here when I get the new bearings, and this isn't going to be used that much before then, but that bearing is going to be changed out. Well, like I said, I don't know whether that set screw came out of there or whether it wasn't put in there to begin with, but because I was kind of suspicious of it because that one failed, I didn't trust this other one down here. This is the drive pulley down here. And I got to looking at that, and I found where the set screw goes in that, and there was no set screw in it. Well, I went through all my set screws and stuff, and I don't have any metric ones, but I went to town yesterday and got a new set screw and put in there, and I put some Loctite on it. But then as I was putting this together, I got to looking, and lo and behold, there's another hole for another set screw in there. So there would be 2 of them in that pulley. And of course that one is missing too. So I had to go to town today and get another set screw. And I'll get that one put in with some Loctite, and then I'll put this thing back together and it should be good to go. Now that thing ran without set screws in it for quite a while before it self-destructed, and that lower one didn't spin or anything. It's got a nice key on it, it's tight on the shaft. But there's an old poem that I always take to heart when I see something like that. I forget what the name of the poem is, but it goes, "For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the knight was lost. For want of a knight, the battle was lost. For want of a battle, the war was lost. For want of a war, the country was lost." So anyway, small things can add up to big problems if you don't take care of them while they're small things. Well, anyway, I've got a new set screw in my pocket. I'll go ahead and see if I can't get that put in there. I've got all the pulleys on. I don't want to take this thing apart again and take those belts off there. I'll see if I can reach in there without doing that. Alright, well, my delicate little hands, they're not as big and meaty as some people I know, but they're still not exactly made for getting down into a spot like that. But I got it. Couldn't get it started. I used the hex key to get it in there and to get it lined up on the hole, but I couldn't get that thing to start. I couldn't get that to turn around in there. I didn't have enough room to get that to turn. So I went and got my ball nose one, and that worked to get it in there, to get it started. I was afraid that it would twist it offside a little bit so it wouldn't line up with the threads, but it worked just perfect for getting it started. And then it got it down into the hole, but it wouldn't go all the way down, so I had to put this in to put one more turn on it to get it all the way down, and then had the small end of it sticking up. So I just took a pair of pliers there and turned it, got it down in there hard. So that lower one has got 2 set screws on it and Loctite in them, tightened down as tight as I could get them, and this top one's got a set screw in it. I didn't put Loctite in the top one, but well, there's probably enough of that Loctite 680 in there that got up on the threads it, I think. So I don't think that one's coming off. Oh, I cleaned that up real good. It had a lot of stuff inside of there. Most of it was, I think, debris that come off this belt when it was slipping and stuff in there. And I still got some new stuff in there off those belts too. It'll take a while to break those belts in again, I guess. But anyway, those are cheap Chinese belts. They'll probably self-destruct too. I don't suppose they'll last very long. We'll have to keep an eye on those. But I've got that all cleaned up in there. There is a gear box right in here that I need to go get some gear grease and put in there and that to get down in there, some lubricant to get down in those gears. That's supposed to be done every few hours. And then I need to get some oil, and there's the bearings right here that the table moves on. Those are supposed to be oiled every day. And of course they haven't been oiled for years. So anyway, I've got to go get some oil before I finish putting this thing back together, and some grease and put down in there those gears. And then I can button it up and this thing should be ready to use. It's now the middle of December, December 14th as a matter of fact, and the fall is pretty much fell. It's all gone. We flew until the first part of September for Fish and Game, and then the weather just turned sour and it didn't get anything done. Any flying done at all. There was no more flying for Fish and Game. Of course, we pretty much had that all wrapped up anyway. The game biologist had mentioned that he wanted to do some goat surveys again and maybe some elk surveys, but again, the weather just didn't cooperate. And I went out twice. I took my wife out once and my son out once doing a scouting trip to go to set up a moose hunting camp. But the weather just didn't cooperate to go out and do any a camp, take the airplane out and go out to a moose hunting camp, so I didn't do that. Feels like I haven't got anything done, but I've been staying fairly busy here. We got the airplane home and put away the middle of November, and I'd been working on the hangar. I had to fix my hangar doors, and then all of the Tyvek, the weatherproofing sheeting, underlayment and stuff that was on the hangar, it all wore out and it tore loose, so the wind was blowing through that like a sieve. And so I got all new weather stripping or weather stuff, Tyvek and some other stuff, and put all around the hangar, got that all done. And then I had to do a little bit of work on my hangar doors to get those so that they would operate the way I wanted them to. Been jury rigging them for years now and making do with them, but I got them fixed up to where they open and close the way they're supposed to. And then I had a couple leaks in the roof in the hangar, so we pulled the tin off of that and put some underlayment, roof underlayment there. Got that sealed up so that's not leaking anymore. And then I started going into the hangar there and cleaning up, trying to straighten things up to make room to work in there. And I went through the soccer shed and cleaned it all out. Found a lot of stuff that was just junk to throw away that we've been saving, and I found some other things that were too good to throw away but I didn't really need anymore, and I sold some of that stuff. And anyway, I made pretty good progress of getting the hangar straightened up, and now I've got to work here on the basement. That's why I was getting this sander straightened up. It's been in here for years and unused and back in the corner behind everything else, and so I got it out. I need to got it straightened up now to where it's working. I've got a few other things that I've got to take care of in here. So I got to pull the wings off of the airplane and replace the fabric on the wings. The crows have just done a number on the wings on the airplane, and they've got pecker holes all over in the tops of them and patches on them. But the left wing, I don't know what happened there, whether they didn't do it right when they put the cover on the wing there or what happened, but a bunch of the strings, when the wings are covered in a Dacron fabric, and they have to use a thread every 2 inches on every rib to tie the fabric down to the wing. Some of those strings had broke and come loose, and the fabric was flopping, and we did a repair on it to get it going enough to get us through the year. But that left wing is not real good there. It's still serviceable, but I want to get it fixed up right. So I'm going to pull the wings off. I'll do it one at a time. Bring one wing up here to the basement, strip it, go through it, make sure there's nothing wrong with any of it structurally, and recover it. So I need some room in the basement, and that's why I'm getting all this stuff straightened out. I got to figure out what I'm going to do with it. All of this stuff was down in the hangar until I redid the fuselage on the airplane, and then when I got it all finished and I took it down to the hangar, I had to build a paint booth in there to paint the tail feathers, the tail surfaces, the rudder, horizontal stabilizer and stuff, and then I had to paint the fuselage. So I built a paint booth down there, and I needed the room in the hangar to do that. So all of this stuff that's up here, most of it that's up here, came out of the hangar, got stored up here. Well, now I need to find a place for it so I can take a wing off, and I'm just going to do one wing at a time, but I got to take a wing off and bring it up here and strip it, and I need a space. The wing is 6 feet wide and 17 feet long, so I need at least that much room, plus a couple of feet on either side of it to get around it. Anyway, I better get busy and get this stuff taken care of so I can get it out of the way. Of course, like I said, running through a planer, this board was cupped on one side and a little bit twisted and stuff, and so ideally you run that through a jointer and then to get one side flat, and then run it through a planer. And when you run it through a planer, you get kind of a burnished surface on it, where running it through this sander, you've got a rough surface on there. Although we could get this down a lot more, but I've got a pretty coarse piece of sandpaper in there right now that we use to hog off a lot of material on this cypress timbers or cypress planks that my friend had. So we've got finer grit sandpaper that we could get a better finish on this, but this is kind of rough, but that would knock down pretty easy with a palm sander, a hand sander, and get that polished up pretty good. Well, anyway, that doesn't have feed rollers in it to push down, and that's the problem with a planer with cupped boards and stuff, is you have feed rollers in there that push the board down flat, and so every time it comes out the other side, the pressure comes off of it and the cup comes back in it. And that's why they recommend that you run it through a jointer first. Of course, that doesn't work if you got boards that are wider than your jointer is. So, but this sander doesn't have feed rollers on it. It's got this table on it, and so the board will fit fairly flat on the table. It's going to rock a little bit. You're not going to get all the twist and stuff out of it like you would doing it with a jointer and a planer. But the one thing that it does do is it makes a nice finish on here. You get knots like this, or grain patterns like this, and knot like that, and a grain pattern like that. You're going to get tear out when you run that through a planer. And running it through the sander here, you can see that's nice and smooth. There's no tear out at all on that. So I could either put a finer piece of paper in there on that roller and run that through again and polish that up, or like I said, it wouldn't take very long to smooth that out with a palm sander and run through some grits on that now. Anyway, that thing works pretty good. I'm happy with it now. I got to go get the vacuum cleaner out, and I'll dust this thing off and get it cleaned up, and then we'll shove it aside while we'll work on something else.